Shannon Gail Christian was born on April 29, 1985, in Nacogdoches, Texas. She later moved with her family from Louisiana to Tennessee in 1997 and then graduated from Farragut High School in 2003. She then enrolled at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, majoring in sociology. She loved golf and had a bright future ahead. Instead of enjoying dorm life, she remained at home to save money and worked 2 part-time jobs while taking on a full class schedule. In 2007, she met and fell in love with Chris Newsom. Chris was born on September 21, 1983, and was local to Knoxville. Before college, he had been a standout baseball player at Halls High School. After graduating in 2002, he attended Pellissippi State Community College and worked as a carpenter. He was described by his father, Hugh, as a talented craftsman whose crown molding remains in homes throughout the city of Knoxville. Unfortunately, on Saturday night, January 6, 2007, the worst imaginable nightmare would befall both Shannon and Chris. Chris had originally planned to play golf with friends, but changed his mind to spend the evening with Shannon. They planned to watch a movie and then attend a party. Shannon was hanging out at her friend Kara Soward's apartment in the Washington Ridge apartment complex in North Knoxville, where Chris planned to pick them up and take them to a party. However, at 7:30 p.m., Chris called and said he was running late, but said he would be there in about 30 minutes. So Shannon told Kara to go on ahead and they wouldn't be too far behind. At 8 p.m., Kara left to go on ahead to the party. At 8:47 p.m., Chris withdrew $100 from his bank account at an ATM in the Halls area. At 9 p.m., Chris dropped off his friend Josh at the party and told him and other friends there that he was going to get Shannon and they were going out to eat and would join the party later. Kara then called Shannon and told her that Chris was on his way, which was about a 10-minute drive from the party to the Washington Ridge apartments. Unfortunately, that was the last time they ever heard from Shannon or Chris. By 10 p.m., when Chris and Shannon had not arrived at the party, their friends called and texted them, but received no response. Around 1 a.m., 2 of Chris's friends went to the Washington Ridge apartments in search of him and discovered that his truck was in the parking lot, but Shannon's 2005 Toyota 4Runner was missing. Unbeknownst to everyone, Shannon and Chris had been carjacked and abducted from the parking lot of the Washington Ridge apartment complex. Between 9:10 p.m. and 11 p.m., never to be seen alive again. The following morning, Shannon's boss called and said she had failed to show up for work. At that point, her mother, Dina, knew something was wrong. So they called Chris's parents, and to their shock, they hadn't heard from them either. They then called Kara to find out if Shannon ever arrived back at the apartment, but she hadn't. Kara told them that Chris's truck was still in the parking lot, but there was no sign of Shannon's Toyota 4Runner. Both sets of parents began calling hospitals and jails, trying to track down the couple, but there was no sign of them anywhere. They then tried to report them missing, but since it was a college town and it had only been 12 hours, police figured they were just shacked up somewhere. Sadly, they couldn't have been more wrong. The detective told them that they needed to keep looking for the couple themselves, so Shannon's father, Gary, called the phone company and asked them to ping her phone, and it traced to an area on Cherry Street. If you are from Knoxville or have lived there for any time, you know this is not a good area to be in. It's a very seedy part of town, and most locals stay far away. It's definitely not a place that 2 college students would willingly go, especially at night. Once they had that information, Gary and a group of searchers headed to Cherry Street to look for the couple. Together with an off-duty officer friend of Gary's, they organized a search from a gas station on Cherry Street. Even though the searchers were scared to death, considering it was now nighttime in a very bad neighborhood, they trudged on. As Gary arrived at the corner of Chipman Street and Glider Avenue, he saw his daughter's 4Runner and immediately called the police and his off-duty friend. Within minutes, multiple cop cars were on the scene. Inside Shannon's vehicle, many of her items, including her purse, was missing, But one thing that stood out was that the driver's seat had been pushed back all the way and leaned back. This was a telltale sign that someone else had been driving her vehicle, but who? However, once again, Knoxville police don't treat this as an endangered missing person case and instead treated it as an abandoned vehicle. The 4Runner was then impounded, and the parents of Channon and Chris were told to go home and get some sleep and wait for the kids to call them. It's a frustrating response from police, but they, like most people in this relatively safe city, have no clue to the horrors that await. On Monday morning, January 8, 2007, less than 100 yards from where Shannon's vehicle was found, a passing train engineer saw what appeared to be human remains smoldering on the side of the tracks. When investigators arrived, they sadly find Chris's nude remains, with burns over 80% of his body. He had also been bound, gagged, and shot 3 times. Once the news of Chris's murder spread around the community, panic set in about Shannon's whereabouts. Law enforcement also realized at that point that they had seriously screwed up and needed to find Channon quickly and locate the individuals who were responsible. Both family and the searchers from the previous night headed back to Cherry Street and began a massive search for Channon. Meanwhile, forensic technicians began processing the 4Runner for fingerprints, and while most of the vehicle was wiped clean, they were able to obtain one thumbprint on an envelope in the back seat. When they ran the print through the database, it came back to an ex-con named Lamarcus Davidson, who had just got out of prison a few months prior. Davidson wasn't a Knoxville native, but was known across the state for his long criminal history, which included drug dealing, aggravated robbery, and his most recent crime, carjacking. They contacted his parole officer and learned that he lived a few blocks away from where Shannon's car was found at 2316 Chipman Street. They raided the home, but Davidson wasn't there. As they searched the home, they made a gruesome discovery. Inside a large plastic trash can, sitting in the corner of the home, were the remains of Channon. Her hands were tied, and she apparently had suffocated to death inside the trash can. An autopsy would reveal that both Channon and Chris had been sexually assaulted by multiple people repeatedly and violently for hours. They had essentially been tortured. Now, police desperately needed to find the suspect or suspects. They were able to learn that the house was being leased by Lamarcus Davidson and a 22-year-old woman named Daphne Sutton. Daphne had been in a sexual relationship with Davidson since he showed up in town. Daphne was brought in for questioning, but insisted she knew nothing about the murders, saying she had moved out of the house several days earlier. She told investigators she had been involved with another man at the time of the murders, and her alibi checked out. However, she did give investigators a good lead. She told them that Davidson had a crew of thugs from Kentucky and had been terrorizing Cherry Street for the past few days. Those individuals were George Thomas, Latalvis Cobbins, and Vanessa Coleman. Together, they had been committing multiple home invasions and robbed 2 restaurants. Investigators were eventually able to locate Davidson in an abandoned house not far from the crime scene. Once in custody, they searched the home and found Chris's tennis shoes. Davidson was taken back to the police station and questioned by detectives, but denied involvement in the crime. Meanwhile, authorities were trying to track down the other suspects. Using DVDs that were found at the crime scene and were overdue from a library in Kentucky, they were able to get a potential address of where the suspects might be. When they raided that home in Lebanon, Kentucky, they surprisingly found all 3 individuals, George Thomas, Latalvis Cobbins, and Vanessa Coleman. Also inside, they found Shannon's perfume, wallet, and purse. All 3 were brought back to Knoxville and questioned, but just like Davidson, denied involvement. However, investigators had more than enough evidence, including Davidson's fingerprints on the trash bag that Channon was found in, Vanessa Coleman's DNA on the sheets used to bind Channon, George Thomas's gun matched the ballistics from the bullets found in Chris's body, and DNA from both Davidson and Cobbins were recovered from Channon using a sexual assault kit. A 5th individual by the name of Eric Boyd was also arrested and charged with accessory to murder. Once the group of individuals realized they were not getting away with these murders scot-free, they began turning on each other. Cobbins put the blame on Davidson, while Davidson put the blame on everyone else. However, during this process, investigators were able to piece together the events of the night. On the night of the murders, Davidson and his crew were driving around Knoxville looking for a car to jack to use in another robbery. That's when they pulled into the Washington Ridge apartment complex and spotted Shannon's new 2005 Toyota 4Runner that her parents had bought her. Unfortunately, they caught Chris and Shannon off guard, standing outside the vehicle kissing. At gunpoint, they threw them in the back of the 4Runner and drove to Davidson's rental home on Chipman Street, where they put Shannon and Chris through the most horrible ordeal a person could imagine. In the end, Lamarcus Davidson, the ringleader, was convicted of multiple counts, including first-degree murder, and sentenced to death. Latalvis Cobbins, Davidson's half-brother, was sentenced to life in prison without parole. George Thomas, an accomplice, was initially sentenced to life without parole, but later resentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 51 years. Vanessa Coleman was convicted of facilitation of the crimes and originally sentenced to 53 years, later reduced to 35 years. She was denied parole in 2014 and again in 2020. She will not be eligible again until 2030. Eric Boyd was originally convicted on federal charges as an accessory, but was later indicted in 2018 for first-degree felony murder. In 2019, he was sentenced to consecutive life terms. Unfortunately, their trials were initially marred by controversy when Judge Richard Baumgartner, who presided over the cases, was found guilty of official misconduct due to his drug addiction. This led to retrials for Thomas and Coleman, though Davidson's and Cobbins' convictions remained upheld. In addition to being addicted to opiates and purchasing prescription drugs from felons, Baumgartner was also accused of engaging in sexual relationships and trading legal favors for sex. One of the most notable allegations was that he had a relationship with Dina Castleman, a drug court graduate and repeat offender whom he helped avoid jail time. Reports indicated that Baumgartner engaged in sex acts inside the courthouse during court hours and used his position to provide legal leniency in exchange for these encounters. His misconduct ultimately led to his resignation in March 2011 and a guilty plea for official misconduct. He was later disbarred and convicted on federal charges related to his corruption. Baumgartner died in 2018 at age 70, leaving behind one of the most infamous cases of judicial corruption in Tennessee history. Following the murders, both families established scholarships in their children's names. Waste Connections, a national garbage company, purchased and demolished the house on Chipman Street in 2008, creating a memorial for Channon and Chris. 2 Tennessee acts also came out of this case. The first one was the Chris Newsom Act, which eliminated the requirement for a judge to approve a jury's unanimous verdict. The hope behind this act was that it would cut down on retrials, like the ones that occurred in this case. The second was the Shannon Christian Act, which prevents evidence or allegations of previous behavior that could call into question the character of a victim, defendant, witness, or third party. This was passed in order to prevent attorneys and defendants in attempting to portray a victim in a negative light, such as making allegations about their behavior. During the trial, Davidson had alleged that his victims had come to his house to buy drugs. The defense also attacked Shannon's character. However, due to already established laws, prosecutors were not allowed to inform the jury of Davidson's previous carjacking conviction. To this day, Chris and Shannon's families continue to fight for justice and honor their memories, ensuring that they will never be forgotten. On December 14, 2005, emergency responders discovered a burning red 2003 Jaguar on the outskirts of Las Vegas. In the trunk, they found the charred body of a woman, her head completely encased in duct tape with a fabric ligature around her neck. the body was sent to the medical examiner, while investigators traced the car's registration to 33-year-old Kelly Ryan. Police then went in search of Kelly and found her at home alive with her husband, 39-year-old Craig Titus, a professional bodybuilder. In 1996, he became a bodybuilding champion and Mr. Olympia competitor, while Kelly was a past Fitness America and Fitness International winner. Kelly claimed their 28-year-old live-in assistant, Melissa James, had taken the car. The couple alleged Melissa had been using drugs and stealing from them. According to them, they had parted ways with Melissa on December 12th, and she had been staying at a motel before planning to return home. However, an autopsy revealed that Melissa had no smoke in her lungs, meaning she was dead before the car was set fire. Her system contained a lethal dose of morphine, and strangulation was suspected, though the exact cause of death remained undetermined. Detectives officially confirmed the body belonged to Melissa using DNA provided by her mother. Melissa was born on March 23, 1977, and grew up in Panama City, Florida. She was an intelligent student, graduating early from A. Crawford Mosley High School in 1994. From a young age, she was passionate about dance, taking lessons at age 7, and eventually becoming a cheerleader. She attended Gulf Coast Community College for Business Administration, but left before completing her degree to pursue her dream of opening a dance studio. At just 19, she established her own studio where she choreographed routines and provided scholarships for underprivileged children and students with special needs. Melissa also worked as a model, appearing in promotional campaigns for Calvin Klein, Hawaiian Tropics, and Gotcha Clothing. She did commercial work for local television, appeared on MTV, and spent a year as an arena football cheerleader. She met Craig Titus in 1996 in Panama City through a mutual friend, and they quickly became close. Years later, in 2003, when Craig and Kelly moved to Las Vegas, Melissa joined them to work as a personal trainer at a gym Craig managed. When things didn't work out, she returned to Florida, but later moved back to Vegas in October 2005 at their request to assist with their new clothing line, Ice Gear. Craig first noticed his wife Kelly Ryan in 1995 at a fitness show, but hesitated to approach her. He later admitted he had been intimidated by her reputation as a daddy's girl. Kelly initially resisted Craig's advances due to his well-known womanizing reputation, but he persisted. In 1999, he convinced her to spend time with him as friends. Just over a year later, they exchanged vows at the Little White Chapel in Las Vegas. The couple moved to Venice Beach, California, before returning to Vegas in 2002, where they purchased a home at the foot of the Red Rock Mountains. Together, they lived an intense lifestyle, training, competing, partying, and abusing drugs. While Craig was always known for his reckless nature, Kelly underwent a dramatic transformation, altering her appearance with plastic surgery and developing a more volatile personality. Friends noted that she changed, not just in reputation and looks, but in character. By 2005, their relationship had become a toxic cycle of drug use, steroid abuse, and infidelity. While their monogamy-free relationship was public knowledge, only those close to them knew the full extent of their self-destructive behavior in the months leading up to Melissa's murder. Investigators uncovered tension in the household, with rumors of a romantic relationship between Melissa and Craig. There were also suggestions that she had participated in threesomes with the couple, fueling jealousy and resentment. Melissa had also planned to leave Vegas permanently and was set to fly home to New Jersey on December 13th at 10:30 p.m., a flight she never made. On December 17th, a friend of Kelly's contacted the police and revealed that Kelly had confided in her about the night of Melissa's death. According to Kelly, Melissa had threatened her with a taser during an argument, but Kelly gained control and used it on Melissa. She said Craig then intervened, body slamming and choking Melissa. Police later found taser confetti at the couple's home, confirming that a taser had been fired 5 times on December 13th at 2:10 p.m. Investigators examined Craig's phone records and linked him to Anthony Gross, a bodybuilding associate. Gross admitted meeting the couple at a gas station in the early hours of December 14th, where he said they filled up gas cans. Surveillance footage later showed Kelly using Melissa's credit card at a Walmart near their home to purchase 7 bottles of lighter fluid. Around the same time, Gross was caught on nearby security footage. On December 19th, detectives obtained Shell Station surveillance footage from the morning of December 14th. It captured a charcoal gray pickup truck followed by a red Jaguar pulling into the parking lot of the gas station at 4:12 a.m. Gross initially lied to detectives, claiming he went to the Shell Station straight from his apartment. However, additional footage from a Green Valley grocer near Walmart proved otherwise. Investigators later stated that while Gross's involvement was evident, he felt sympathy for Gross's parents, who were devastated by their son's actions. On December 21st, police returned to the couple's home and found it abandoned. A manhunt ensued and ended on December 23rd when Craig and Kelly were arrested outside Boston in Stoughton, Massachusetts. Despite denying involvement, a witness later told investigators that Craig admitted to tasering Melissa and pouring morphine down her throat. Craig had a prior drug history, serving 2 years in federal prison for selling ecstasy in 1995. His probation was revoked after testing positive for steroids, and he was once again released in 1999. Friends later told police that both Craig and Kelly used OxyContin, and witnesses testified that Craig once purchased $500 worth of morphine. Initially, the couple claimed that Melissa died of an overdose and that they panicked, burned her body, and fled, fearing that publicity about her death would ruin their careers. However, investigators had overwhelming evidence, and in May of 2006, Craig pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 21 to 55 years in prison. Kelly pleaded guilty to arson and entered an Alford plea for battery with a deadly weapon, receiving 2 consecutive terms of 3 to 13 years. She was paroled in 2017. Gross, who assisted in disposing of the body, received a probationary sentence. Shortly after Kelly was convicted, her mother, 61-year-old Nikki Ryan, suffered a fatal heart attack while showing her home in Laguna Niguel, California, to a real estate agent. A cardiac technician at a sports and wellness center, Nikki had traveled back and forth to Las Vegas trying to sell Kelly and Craig's home to help cover legal fees. According to a former coworker, Nikki had been under extreme stress from her daughter's crimes and sentencing, ultimately dying of a broken heart. Kelly later filed for divorce from Craig while in prison, finalizing it in December 2009. Melissa had trusted Craig and Kelly as friends, but instead she was betrayed and murdered. Her dreams of reopening a dance studio and continuing her passion for helping children were cut short in a crime fueled by jealousy, control, and violence. Shaelynn Lehano-Stone was born in September 2006 in Hilo, Hawaii. Sadly, she lived a very short life that was marred by constant abuse, neglect, and systemic failures by child welfare authorities. Early on, Shaelynn was removed from her parents, Kevin Lehano and Tiffany Stone, due to allegations of abuse and neglect, and placed in foster care. This intervention followed concerns about the well-being of her brother, who was also placed in foster care for similar reasons. In May 2008, the system unfortunately returned Shaelynn to her parents. Just a few months later, Child Welfare Services received reports of physical abuse, neglect, and threats from her mother. However, officials closed the investigation without confirming the allegations. In January 2009, concerns resurfaced when Shaelynn exhibited signs of failure to thrive after significant weight loss over 2 years. Once again, she was placed in foster care. Despite repeated warnings, confirmed threats of abuse, and continued evidence of neglect, the state reunited Shaelynn with her parents in 2011. Within a month, Tiffany claimed she could no longer care for Shaelynn and transferred custody to her own mother, Henrietta Stone. In 2014, another report of concern was filed about the adults involved in Shaelynn's life, but authorities assessed the risk as moderate and referred the family for voluntary case management instead of opening a formal investigation. In 2015, Henrietta Stone filed paperwork to homeschool Shaelynn, effectively removing her from any oversight by school authorities. By November of that year, Shaelynn was pulled out of Hilo Union Elementary School, and it is believed that she was last seen alive by other family members around Thanksgiving of that year. On June 28, 2016, emergency responders were called to the Stone household in Hilo, where they found Shaelynn unconscious, emaciated, and weighing just 45 pounds at 53 inches tall. The average weight for a girl that age is 70 pounds, with normal, healthy averages between 53 and 102. She was transported to Hilo Medical Center, where she sadly died a few hours later. Her death certificate listed malnutrition as the primary cause of death, with acute pneumonia and a severe kidney infection contributing to her passing. Investigations revealed a harrowing pattern of abuse, including physical and medical neglect, psychological abuse, and starvation by her parents and grandmother. Prosecutors found that Shaelynn had been denied food, water, and medical care for nearly a year before her death. The refrigerator in the household even had alarms installed to prevent her from accessing food. In 2017, all three adults, Tiffany Stone, Kevin Lehano, and Henrietta Stone, were arrested and charged with second-degree murder. In the end, they pleaded no contest to manslaughter. Despite the gravity of their crimes, the sentences handed down were shockingly lenient. Her so-called parents each received 10 years of probation and 2 years in jail. Henrietta, the so-called grandmother who had custody of Shaelynn at the time of her death, was sentenced to 10 years of probation and was credited for the time she had already served in custody from 2017 to 2024. Despite overwhelming evidence of abuse, neglect, and failure by the state's child welfare system, no further accountability was imposed on the agencies responsible for Shaelynn's protection. Her siblings, who were also placed in foster care, are now suing the state for unspecified damages, alleging that the system's negligence contributed to their sister's tragic death. Shaelynn was repeatedly returned to a dangerous environment despite clear signs of abuse, ultimately leading to her slow and painful death at the hands of those who were supposed to protect her. Skylar Annette Neese was born on February 10, 1996, as the sole child of Dave and Mary Neese. At 16, she lived in Star City, West Virginia, and was an honors student at University High School in Monongalia County, pursuing a career in criminal defense while working evenings at Wendy's. On July 5, 2012, after completing her shift at Wendy's, Skylar returned to her family's apartment. When everyone awoke the next morning, Skylar was gone and never seen alive again. After being reported missing, investigators got to work trying to locate her. They found surveillance footage which revealed that she snuck out around 12:30 a.m. and got into a light-colored car. Initially, the identities of the car's occupants remained unknown, but by the fall of 2012, investigators confirmed that the sedan belonged to Shelia Eddy, a close friend of Skylar's. Shelia was questioned by police, but claimed she dropped Skylar back off at home an hour later. Skylar's father, Dave Neese, noted that she had left behind her cell phone charger, contact lenses, and solution, which indicated her intention to return home, but she never did. Initially, law enforcement classified Skylar as a runaway, which delayed an Amber Alert since she was not considered to be in immediate danger. Early tips placed her in North Carolina, but the sightings were false. Meanwhile, her parents posted missing person flyers throughout Monongalia County with the help of Skylar's best friends, Shelia Eddy and Rachel Shoaf. On September 10, 2012, the FBI and West Virginia State Police joined the search for Skylar and began interviewing her friends and classmates. To investigators, her best friends, Shelia and Rachel, stuck out to them as potential suspects. However, they didn't have the evidence at the time to prove it. That is, until Rachel suffered a nervous breakdown 6 months after the murder, leading to her mother calling 911. She was then hospitalized in a psychiatric facility for 5 days. After her release, she went straight to her lawyer's office and confessed. Rachel then led investigators to Skylar's body in Wayne Township, Greene County, Pennsylvania, less than 30 miles from Skylar's home. On March 13, 2013, it was announced that the remains found on January 16, 2013, had been officially identified as belonging to Skylar. Rachel also dropped a huge bombshell. She said that she and Shelia had both took part in killing Skylar because they didn't like her and didn't want to be friends with her anymore. Court transcripts revealed that Shelia Eddy and Rachel Shoaf had meticulously planned Skylar's murder in advance. They packed cleaning rags, bleach, wet wipes, a shovel, and a change of clothes in the trunk of Sheila's car. Additionally, they wrapped 2 knives in towels and concealed them under their arms before picking Skylar up at 12:30 a.m. The girls, who had previously visited a remote area in Brave, Pennsylvania to smoke marijuana, drove there again. Once there, they pretended to have forgotten a lighter. When Skylar turned her back to get one from the car, Shelia and Rachel counted to 3 before launching their attack. Skylar tried to run, but Rachel tackled her, and both girls began stabbing her repeatedly. At one point, Skylar managed to grab Rachel's knife and stab her above the ankle. Rachel claimed that this injury caused her to stop attacking, but Shelia continued stabbing Skylar until she fell silent. Rachel later testified that Shelia didn't stop until Skylar's neck stopped making weird sounds. Initially, the girls planned to bury Skylar's body, but the ground was too rocky and hard to dig. Instead, they covered her remains with branches, dirt, and leaves. Before leaving, they changed out of their bloody clothing, wiped themselves and the car down with wet wipes, and then drove home as if nothing had happened. However, at Rachel's May 2023 parole hearing, she provided a deeper motive. She and Shelia had been in a secret romantic relationship, which caused tension with Skylar. This had long been speculated, but was never confirmed until Rachel's testimony. Skylar's diary entries from fall 2011 also corroborated this claim. She wrote about a sleepover at Rachel's house with Shelia, where the 3 had been drinking alcohol. That night, Skylar witnessed Rachel and Shelia engaging in sexual activity. Skylar did not leave the room out of fear of running into Rachel's strict mother. On May 1, 2013, Rachel pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. She confessed to unlawfully, feloniously, willfully, maliciously, and intentionally causing the death of Skylar Neese by stabbing her and inflicting fatal injuries. Although her plea agreement recommended a 20-year sentence, Rachel was instead sentenced to 30 years in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 10 years. In 2023, her parole request was denied. Shelia, on the other hand, was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years. Rachel has been denied parole twice, and Shelia will have her first chance at parole in 2028. One unsettling detail from the case is Rachel's diary entry from the day after the murder, where she extensively discussed the Skylar situation and sought forgiveness from God for what happened that night and for all these lies. Additionally, other students overheard conversations between Rachel and Shelia about the murder plot, but they never reported it, mistaking it for a joke. Skylar's parents, driven by their grief and determination, became advocates for missing children and pushed for new laws. Their efforts led to the enactment of Skylar's Law, which significantly reformed Amber Alert policies in West Virginia. Skylar's brutal murder stands as one of the most disturbing and senseless crimes committed by teenagers. It was fueled by jealousy, secrecy, and a profound sense of cruelty. Dustin Reeb was born on April 1, 1990, in Enid, Oklahoma, to Karen Dawson and Russell Reeb. He was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, which made social interactions difficult. At some point, he told his family he was bisexual, but it didn't go over very well, and it's reported that they basically shunned him after that. He eventually left Waukomis, Oklahoma, and moved to Dallas, Texas, hoping for a fresh start, becoming known to many in his new community by his stage name, Sean J. Walsh. By the time he was 22, he had been living in the Dallas area for about 3 years, building a life for himself. On November 30th, 2012, his life was brutally cut short. Dustin's housemate, Tony Adams, came home from work around 5 p.m. and found Dustin's body in their Carrollton home, and along with many of his belongings missing. He had been stabbed multiple times and been beaten with a baseball bat. Investigators described the horrific scene, noting that blood was everywhere. Right away, Tony was a person of interest, as is often the case when someone discovers a body. However, after cooperating with police and providing names of potential suspects, he was cleared. One of the names he gave was Nathaniel Lee Guerrero, a social acquaintance of Dustin's. It didn't take long for investigators to track down stolen items that Guerrero had tried to pawn. The day before Dustin's murder, he and Guerrero had been at a mutual friend's house when Guerrero was accused of stealing an iPad. On the day of the murder, Dustin confronted him about it, and Guerrero retaliated by beating and stabbing Dustin to death. On December 4th, 2012, just days after the murder, Carrollton police arrested Guerrero. He already had a long rap sheet, including charges for assault, domestic violence, theft, and trespassing. In the end, he was convicted for the murder and sentenced to 40 years in prison. Thankfully, before his untimely death, Dustin had reconnected with his mother, Karen, after years of estrangement. They spent a month together in Oklahoma, which turned out to be a small comfort in the wake of his tragic death. Karen was outraged when Guerrero was sentenced to only 40 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after serving just 20 years. The reduced sentence happened because police had violated Guerrero's Miranda rights during the investigation, leading to his confession and other evidence being thrown out. Karen believed the case was mishandled and that Guerrero should have faced a much harsher punishment, especially since the murder itself was so gruesome. Guerrero had beaten Dustin so badly that his face was unrecognizable, and Tony, who discovered his body, could only identify him by his clothes and distinctive eyebrows. It took dental records to officially confirm his identity. Dustin's death left a lasting impact on those who loved him. The whole ordeal left many wondering if justice was truly served.